to the efforts of Shropshire chefs from the 80s to please their customers with their culinary art. Well, today we'll begin with the Iron Age and life on the old Oswestry hill fort. A banquet is to be prepared, but the gods are against the poor serving cook to the tribal chief, and she is sentenced to die for her failure. Shropshire on a Plate, Part 1, The Integrity of Fire, is written by Ruth Hipwood of Shrewsbury and read for us by Diane of the Shawbury Players.
Something of daylight still lingered. The Cornby tribe had often witnessed total devastation before. But today, suddenly, forest gods intervened. 220 AD in the late Iron Age, and a foul stench oozed pungently from the rancid, turf-covered hilltops. Two hastily constructed ramparts intertwine elongated ditches to form a second fortress encampment. All reeked biliously, embracing a smell of charred human flesh amidst the cloudy wood smoke. Death reigned supreme. Announced executions of kinsmen by the elders now compelled me to shake violently from head to foot in terror. I, serving cook to a great noble household, must stand condemned to die. Why? They said I had knowingly displeased the gods. Our future looked so uplifting many hours before. My liege lord had found this countryside hill fort previously while on the move. Later, within earshot, clan warriors hurriedly assembled, captured Ordovicii slaves from the neighbouring hinterland. These people, now crushed with our might, built circular huts of stone within the enclosure to our specifications. Large erratic holes, located by the stone base, provide, miraculously, rainwater from the heavens. Moreover, a deserted grain store was left half full. The master's wealth, namely pigs, sheep and horses, could graze undisturbed in a nearby forest copse without any enemy threat. His cattle, undisputed noble wealth, can now go fat from leafy fodder around us. Praise the ripe field, forest and hedgerow. Nature is paradise. We shall survive after all. That afternoon, a blazing sun cast a shadow on nearby oak trees. But the unexpected clatter of hooves on earth broke the deafening silence around us. Guards protecting the stone-riveted entrance had detained a warrior on horseback. My sovereign chieftain emerged momentarily from the royal hut to proclaim this man to enter. I stopped my work to watch this stranger approach the king, as he was not one of us. His lean, angular body stank of blue woad and perspiration, surmounted by a ruddy complexion and crowned with a rat tail of greasy, matted hair. He carried a dagger and shield, and closely hugged a leather case containing long, sword-shaped bars. Bodyguards brushed me aside. Was he that important? Anyway, must get on with my work. I live to serve the master. With a sudden panicked flourish, the stranger departed from the royal hut, minus the long metal bars. He was escorted to the rear entrance with all speed by the guards. His Majesty, the clan chieftain, then commanded me to see him. I entered the hut and was told thus: go forth into the forest and find herbs to bless a gathering of importance. Kill birds and tame beasts for a banquet. Produce a wine fit for warriors and noblemen. This ritual banquet, honoured by the use of cattle-head fire dogs and a sacred iron cauldron kept only for this purpose, shall be your greatest task. The future of the Cornby tribe depends on the outcome of this meal. I left my sovereign with all haste to prepare the dishes. Undeterred from the immense challenge, I set to work. Collected labour was necessary in order to collect and process the ingredients in time for the gathering. My lord firstly requested herbs. From what is available, I can offer him only these: dandelion, plantain, chickweed, woodruff, hop, prickly purple clover, and wild mustard. Sweet berries near the enclosure are wild strawberry, cherry and blackberry. Ravens are plentiful in the forest, and a yearling sheep could be sacrificed. A cow died on arrival here, so it could be used for this occasion. Its whites and offal would make a nice haggis. Finally, he wishes wine fit for his guests. Mephedlin, namely a fermented honey beverage mixed with water, blackberries and woodruff for a sparkle that would suit the taste required. My children raided the forest to slingshot the birds. All was in readiness to cook in front or on top of the royal hearth. Great kings had arrived to my liege lord's table. King Corio arrived in splendour from a land near the Avon. Comox, plus Regent son Bodvac, commander of the Midlands territory, arrived also, and complained he was not accorded the title Rex in the Roman fashion of a past overlord. He offered coins to my master, and he found this strange to pay for a ritual feast. So much was sacrificed for this encounter. Wool, meat and weapons are the only thing the tribe has to trade. The banquet commenced with my supervision. Stuffed ravens filled with pounded thistle meat started the proceedings. A haggis of beef filled with lights, fattened offal roasted near the hearth. Fire cakes warmed slowly on stones, consisting of beef blood, eggs, leftover grain and fat. Roast mutton hung on a rope tied to a spit rod. Sour curds and whey, blended with dried hazelnuts, mushroom puree, and cherries, filled them while the lamb cooked. The beast was washed down with a drink made from dandelion heads boiled and strained. Finally, the great stew needed a start. The iron cauldron was placed to hang on the spit. Plantain, chickweed, mustard, dandelion leaves, and hops were set to boil in rainwater. Leftover grain, strawberries, and acorns were added. The fire was stoked to take the beef to come. A toasted metheglin blessed the animal in hide to cook. It was lowered slowly to the mixture, and then something went wrong. Water bubbled, fat hit the fire. The inferno exploded to the walls of timber as everyone tried to escape from the royal hut. I am doomed. The forest leaves are tainted with the devil god. I am sore afraid. Help me. The modern cook wouldn't have suffered so much for a mistake like a cook of the Iron Age. The great stew is a concoction known to many farmhouse cooks for its simplicity and history.
Diane Wood reading part 1 of Shropshire on a Plate, written by Ruth Hipwood, at the integrity of fire about life in the Iron Age hill fort of Oswestry around about 20 AD. If you'd like to make a rather more modern equivalent to that meal which didn't please the gods, then you can write to us at the end of the series for a fact sheet about that episode and the following episodes to Shropshire on a Plate, Radio Shropshire, P.O. Box 397 Shrewsbury. And please include a stamped envelope and we'll send you a fact sheet about that meal and how you can make a modern equivalent of it. But you might like to wait to the end of the series and send off the whole lot at once. Shrewsbury, P.O. Box 397, Shrewsbury, Radio Shropshire, Shropshire on a Plate, should you wish to have more. And tomorrow, at the same time, moving up into a rather more modern time. These are the kind of meals they would have produced at the venerable old dwellings of Shropshire. Today we move to the times of the Roman settlement of Shropshire and to Virconium around about 130 AD. Episode 2 of Shropshire on a Plate by Ruth Hipwood is called Dinner Postponed, and it's read by Lynne Rixon of the Shawbury Players.
Wiping the sweat from his forehead, Mum Swaiters opened the door. Immediately we stopped talking. This was something we hadn't expected. Huddled together in the north wing, a large oblong Roman kitchen sustained our refuge. Meanwhile, on a raised hearth, the metal gridiron hissed over a blazing charcoal fire, on which small dishes are bubbling. Substantial goat joints sizzle on a spit above the sunken hearth. Around the wall stand clay, pear-shaped storage jars, some buried into the dirt-pounded floor. Names are scratched or painted on several of them to identify and label their contents. Larger, cumbersome receptacles accommodate honey, pepper, olive oil and dried dates. Against the far wall lies 2 purpose-built stone-bread ovens. Nearby, a wooden table is courteously littered with implements for the workaday cook. Iron knives and spoons compete in piles for precious space, along with colanders, stew pots and Samian-ware bowls containing fruit. Only a bronze ewer with an empty wash bowl underneath took pride of place at the right-hand corner of the surface. These objects unleashed a penetrating stare from Manswaiters. He confronted the work table with apprehension. Suddenly, rapid-fire, split-second glances counted painstakingly every single object, item or possession on view. 1 cleaver, 2 spoons, and so it went on until eternity. This task appeared strange to us, but since this is his house, we cannot argue the toss. Vesper, my younger sister, and I attempted to get up from the wooden stools near the fire, and he wouldn't let us. How can anyone fight against a sharpened hand dagger flourished insidiously at you by a man over 6 feet tall? We took the subtle hint and remained seated. What else can you do but melt into each other for safety? How could he be so magnificently cruel? We haven't done anything to his property. His reputation and track record in the gladiatorial arena had given him that image. Why show off to us? We had worshipped him from afar already. Our parents had taken us to the arena in Virconium, near the village of Roxeter, all the way from Cirencester, just to see him win yet another contest in battle. Father said we could stay overnight at the inn by the fortress walls. The revered Emperor Hadrian Augustus had opened a new market square this day, 130 AD, and pronounced a public holiday for all. It didn't take much bribing to secure entrance to the town's favourite hero. One centurion guard required 100 silver denarii to become blind and deaf. Now the man we both came to see, both publicly and privately, is treating us like a common criminal. Is it wrong to want a keepsake each of the moment? Mansuetus flexed his ample shoulder muscles and proceeded to examine the blade to the hand dagger. He smiled to reveal 3 broken teeth. In a half-hearted thought, he remembered and covered up the detail. Vesper's face fell at this peculiar revelation, and she started to cry. He replaced the dagger in the scabbard behind his back and bent down to comfort my little sister. The first sporting citizen of the imperial provinces started to brush his hands through her hair. She sniffled slightly, as if pacified, and started to giggle. He started laughing. I couldn't help myself, and we all embraced a joy that pained our sides. Strangers we are not. Friends a possibility. Swift as an eagle, he jumped up and furiously warmed his hands in anticipation. Those nimble fingers soon got to work. My idol suggested by mine that we might be hungry and that nourishment would be forthcoming. We rose from the stools, but he pointed at the stools again and looked very, very stern. All right, we will remain seated. Beside one huge storage jar across the room stood a wooden box. To our surprise, the front doors revealed a haven for rabbits. I should have known so before, for there was a dead one, still undrawn with sinew above it. He removed the creature from the ceiling by cutting some jute twine, which encircled tightly around its hindquarters. The beast was laid across the cabinet top to be dismembered. Upon the gall and entrails being thrust in a bowl, the rabbit looked ready to be stuffed. Mansuetus collected the small dishes from the high hearth and placed the boiling contents in the creature. He collected some horse chestnut paste from a jar on a shelf. Mixing some eggs, wine and dried dates and olive oil was quite a sticky business. This mess was thrown into the carcass of the rabbit and tied up with the twine. A little flour was procured from a small storage jar and mixed with the blood remaining to form a kind of pastry. The dough covered the animal to form a rock-hard crust. Sadly, he left it on the firestone by the sunken hearth and started to place wood from a side basket into a cold bread oven. Below the game cupboard for rabbits, there is a funny-shaped cage of sorts. It is woven with flax, but the grater is made from rush. The style is one of a beehive, and he indicated I should come over and look inside. Vesper looked dolefully at the live rabbits within the store above, so in a kind gesture Mansuetus picked one up and gave it to her as a toy, closing the doors behind. I opened the beehive and found a collection of small earthenware jars with lids. He took off the lid, and the most adorable tiny dormice came out to greet me. They were tied down. Chubby vermin, good to eat. We selected 3 from the basket. A dash of bay leaf, cinnamon with vinegar went into each pot after a close inspection for cleanliness. All tiny animals were strangled with their tether. Wax from the honey storage jar sealed the meals. He placed them and the stuffed rabbit in a hot bread oven with a wooden paddle for placement near the fire. 2 round stones closed the entrance. Finally, he collected a leather hide flask from behind the oven, from which he poured out some Falernian wine into glass beakers on the work table. Nearly forgetting the omelette would be a disservice to this marvellous cook. His powerful hands broke 8 eggs into a skillet placed there after removing the small dishes. Honey, milk, breadcrumbs went into the dish as he gave it a stir. With 2, 4, 6 tosses of a lamb's tail, he finished cooking the dessert to our banquet. All 3 courses didn't remain very long on the plates. We offered to clear up afterwards, but he refused outright. Instead, he removed 2 pendants from around his neck. One clay effigy of Jupiter was given to Vesper. She could keep the rabbit. The second prize portrait had been a special treasure of his, namely a bronze likeness of Mithras given to him in Rome. I felt honoured as my champion kissed the both of us. He stooped into a swayback in a most kindly way, broad chest, thick truncated body, scarred legs, receding hairline and wrinkles all made him human, and indoor short toga and sandals made him one of us. Heroes can work clay, or be made of it.
And Dinner Postponed was written by Ruth Hipwood and read by Lynne Rixon, and as with each episode in this series, they're accompanied by a free fact sheet, including a modern equivalent of the meal fared in Roman times. If you'd like one, or one perhaps for each of the episodes in the series, the thing to do is to send a stamped addressed envelope to Shropshire on a Plate. Shropshire on a Plate, P.O. Box 397, Shrewsbury.
Around 11 AD, where the wife of the Lord of the Manor is working to feed the household in a time of threat from neighbouring Ludlow. Conquest, written by Ruth Hipwood of Shrewsbury, is read by Angela Bray of the Shawbury Players.
Dawn captivated the narrow splayed windows at Stokesay Manor. It was 4 o'clock on a bright Sunday. Nestled amongst the Onny Valley and large hillocks beyond our home, we sat there, uttering not a word. What could we possibly do? All that the old man foretold had come true, but we were also made to look fools. Now the second prophecy is in the offing. Our unplanned guest arrives at 11. Theodoric de Say, my dear husband, was the first to break an uneasy silence waiting to be filled. There wasn't any malice, no shock whatsoever, only a strained reaction, contemplating relief that our household schedule this day should be in hand. However, my consort, alas, could not maintain a front with all the servants in the great hall. He was temporarily overcome. I would have to carry on alone with the preparations. Theo hurriedly withdrew outside heavy black oak crossbeams, firm stone walls to slam harshly the new great bound wooden door recently installed to the building. Glancing through a small window, I saw my beloved run for peace to the main well, situated at the frontal courtyard. It is 1115 Anno Domini, the year of prosperity, happiness and expansion. My soothsayer is far more experienced than the one recommended, and we have the church on our side. No young upstart by the name of Ludlow shall take this new residence away from us. I shall fight thus, even if my Lord Protector is unable. Meanwhile, the ominous prediction in detail haunts me, while the servants, knowing the facts, remain untouched. Should events overtake us at 11? We shall see. Having arose from an oak convertible table-back come lounging seat by the long refectory table, I began to recount each possible forthcoming event in my mind before instructing certain kitchen servants as to their final duty. Alençon the elder stated piously, "We shall be in fear of the underworld from morrow to evensong. Ale knights will accompany Master de Ludlow to this county and drain the brewhouse beside the property. A monotonous plague in brimstone and fire shall erupt at our open hearth before serving the meal. Monsieur Renard, chef de cuisine for many years, couldn't cope with all the problems if they did start. This compact, muscular, indentured serf has been injured enough, without more scars to his arms. Alençon saw him bent over our new flat stone hearth in frenzied activity. His heavily lined, dirty face was decorated with a small black moustache. A white baker's hat covered long, curly, shoulder-length hair. Rough, hardened, small hands carried burns on all fingers. There wasn't a fingernail in sight, all lost in a billowy potash. This description proved more than correct, since the elder hasn't seen my senior cook. What terrifies me further concerns each disaster in preparing the banquet luncheon for this day. Being the Sabbath, the menu is simple, only 6 courses with an apple beverage. Soup dory would warm the hungry palate. Fennel al sabroc covered in fruit of the cow would seal further pangs. A soft corn-fed chicken cooked to be set with imported goods is my next choice. But manger still remains a company dish. Roast brawn on porage partners a large bowl of buttered vert. Several varieties make up the concoction, to which we are very proud to grow in our garden. Sweetness from apple juice and distilled cider spirit, served chilled, ruins the other flavours.
during each course, so Pommeau remains to be sucked alone at the end. Dessert before that is a suggestion by Monsieur Renard. He thought silver flat pennies should be included in the Pont Perignon. Each collection of 3 taste pots might be covered in crème fraîche, our fair clotted cream fermented by buttermilk. It warms behind the fire back. A good smuggler's hiding place acceptable from both sides of the wall, which reminds me of other details listed on a Lanson's degree. The kitchen area fire shall reek white smoke from wet wood. A hot pig leather pail filled with white wine, broth and onions for the dory shall bubble over to spill. This in turn shall overheat the conical-shaped wine heater filled with spirit and apple juice crumpled in the sticks. That shall cause the overhanging pan-jack carrying the stuffed chicken to fall down, hitting the roast pork reflecting tin which captures the dripping. An earthenware pot carrying saffron, almonds, sage, parsley, aniseed with the rice boiled dry. It explodes, coveting the 3-pronged skillet nearby holding the fennel, eggs, milk into a dirty mess. The milk sauce for the entree curdles with the flour, salt, pepper and butter in a flat dish located at the edge of a hearthstone. The clotted cream smells off in a jar behind the fireplace. Finally, the hot liquid races in a stream towards the work table, carrying several additions to the menu on a hard surface. Cabbage leaves, borage, nettles, violets and marrow wait to be submerged in butter. Ginger, allspice, pepper, cumin and saffron merge into the dried currants, hard-boiled eggs and brandy to enter the small whole-wheat pastry cases for dessert. Unfortunately, the work table catches fire and all is lost. Madame Isabella? Madame? Questioned the out-of-breath voice. Come see, in the courtyard. My Lord Protector has returned to the courtyard with many parcels. He shares the load with many men. I see lathered horses too. My husband banged on the great hall door. The kitchen maid opened it. Theo had proclaimed loudly not to worry about the situation. John de Verdun, a neighbour, will lend us his master chef for the morning, and he will supply all the ingredients.
Conquest in the series Shropshire on a Plate was written by Ruth Hipwood and read by Angela Bray, and if you'd care to send us...
Right, the eating habits and the diets of Salopians through the ages. Well, today the account of a serving girl at Ludlow Castle in the year 1505, when, you may recall, King Henry was still Lord of the Marches. This episode is called Forage Party. It's written by Ruth Hipwood, and it's read for us now by Rosie Greenham.
Suddenly, almost to my dismay, the call to serve came from on high. Child no longer, I was being moved up. The great hall was ready for me. I found the world both tough and adult. Each day was punctuated with piteous groans of labour, sudden persecutions, and a continual quest for perfection. Gone forever were the naive excuses, the sanctuary of innocence. Now I stand alone. A hard lump rose in my throat rather conspicuously. It was a constant struggle not to cry, although my memory had been warped by time and sorrow. There was no fire tonight. Somehow it was inevitable within the confines of Ludlow Castle. The grey, stone-built edifice had remained comparatively empty since Prince Arthur died 3 years ago. Huge state functions used to be held in the Great Hall. It was a time for rejoicing then. His Royal Highness, good King Henry, maintained a constant vigil on the Marcher Empire. He paid us frequent visits, but now only attends to the fortifications on administrative business. Times are hard. Every penny must be saved for the ordeals to come. I only became dimly aware of the situation when the banqueting hall steward began to save the leavings from today's main meal. He gathered up bread, cold meat, pickle, some marrow fritters gone cold, and a pudding to place in the open-work livery cupboard near the large fireplace. The dregs of a spiced wine were still bubbling on a wine heater in the embers. A boy page collected the vessel from the flames, cooled the object, and helped the steward pour the liquid into a pewter flask for safekeeping. I had to place this vessel in a recess called the livery in short time as not to ruin the mixture. Other things were kept in store for the evening as well. I saw fermenting vinegar he called verjuice, some precious salt, a little poultry and a meat pie.
The hall steward tapped me promptly on the shoulder and said, not to daydream my life away. He advised me to collect a wooden bucket and brush and see the cook about some hot water from the antechamber by the hall. I should start scrubbing the stone walls near the roundhouse keep apartments, for they were filthy. A grey six-paned window loomed by the fireplace. I could hear the night birds softly moaning their cries within the swishing, swaying trees outside, knitted tightly against the pebbled road. It is 15:05, Anno Domini. Do I have to scrub by rushlight? The page made fun of my efforts in order to be released from the task. Meanwhile, a stranger in uniform descended from the steps of the castle keep entrance in haste. He was resplendent in green and white finery. This fine, heavily built individual stood about medium height. Black buckled shoes surmounted his white leggings with a garter. He limped badly from a wound behind the right knee. A luxuriously decorated doublet and short tabard covered a broad chest. The poor man had one arm bigger than the other. He indicated it was from swinging a broad axe for a lot more years than he cared to remember. His closely cropped sandy hair was neatly brushed into a skull-hugging hat. I was mesmerised by the sight in such close proximity. The hall steward angrily raised his voice to my deed and bade me collect a silver tray, a large one, mind, from livery cupboard. Forget the scrubbing, just stand quietly. I'm not to move until he says so. Wishing to keep my employment, I did so with extreme speed. The yeoman bodyguard gave my superior some money from a pouch with a piece of paper. He then walked over to the stone mantelpiece of the fire to collect a small unlighted rushlight. Bending over, he ignited the item, then ambled over to the entranceway to the keep stairs. The steward quickly read the note with a surprised expression. He ran over to me, pulled my shoulders to the appropriate position, arranging the silver tray to a line level to just above my waist. He scoured the open-work cupboard on each side of the 3 levels for the contents. Finally, he settled on some dried broad bean butter in an earthenware pot. 6 coarse oat cakes left over from breakfast went onto a small pewter dish on my tray. 4 cold marrow fritters went onto another plate, with a single portion of branded potted cheddar made the day before. A glass vial filled with white mustard sauce and pickle adorned the little niche between the former items. That heavily fatted goose pudding in a pottery bowl weighed me down the most. I wished he hadn't put that high brown pasty by it. The tastes clash, you should know that. It's full of white fish, dried fruit, hot spices, and an overcooked egg caudle sauce. Whoever eats it, he'll be sick. I promise you, I saw it made. The cooks weren't that careful with the ingredients. Some lovely Welsh cream pancakes were rolled up as a dessert. 8 were placed on a platter. Finally, he selected a flash of wine to go with it. Grog is very potent. Mind you, with anise seeds, green licorice, sweet fennel, clove and coriander and brandy fermented for months and then heated would settle anyone's stomach. Loaded down with my burden, the steward told me to follow the soldier in cautious haste and not ask any questions. I did so, trying not to spill the flask of wine. We trundled slowly up those dark and cold stairs by rushlight with a yeoman ahead of me. He cantered slowly and evenly until we came to a second landing. He told me not to tell when he pinched 3 pancakes from the tray. I tried to scream, but the man covered my mouth with a hand. A coin was placed with my costume. Where, I dare not say, but it didn't hurt, so why should I mind? The wrist will heal. We proceeded to enter the room there. Just short of the door, I was told to first curtsy, low if possible, and speak out loudly, Your Majesty. Place the tray down. The king will cut open his desired foods alone later. Astonished, I cried with delight, but the guard quietened me thus. Before we finally went in, the man said to take pity on him. Since losing his eldest son, he was trying to buy off the next one for loyalty to keep him near. He was costing a lavish harness of armour for his namesake, but the boy is an awkward size. He's over 6 feet tall with a 32-inch waist. I laughed, and a husky, mellow voice beckoned us to enter. Thomas Rhodes, the yeoman, pushed the heavy oak door aside to let me in. A warm, crackling fire greeted us, with brilliant candlelights abounding within the room. Lectern containing vast books surrounded a huge big writing table.
Seated, hunched over some parchments, was a thin, angular, middle-aged man. He was wearing furs and a black hat. His straight, lacklustre hair didn't encroach on such noble attributes. Long nose, deep eyes, and a bold jaw set him apart from other men. I hesitantly placed the tray down by a lighted pewter candlestick. The yeoman stood upright to attention. "Your Majesty," I said, and curtsied low in allegiance.
Forage Party was written by Ruth Hipwood of Shrewsbury and read there by Rosie Greenham. And if you'd like a series of fact sheets...
We visit Clive House in Shrewsbury in the year 1762 to see the lifestyle of the upper classes of the day. The Master's Table is written by Ruth Hipwood and read by Angela Bray of the Shawbury Players.
Hunger is socially unacceptable. I think not. It may be the character of a mind to be singularly preoccupied, in part natural, in part an affliction of some sort. Healthy things have a dangerous habit of turning into an unhealthy direction. It was Ramley's immense obesity that made him too big for any place or space. He curiously weighted the poor creaking floorboards in the vestibule, nearly crushed unmercilessly an upholstered easy chair within the drawing room, and is far too big for a wooden seat at table in the dining room. Somehow dining seating arrangements will have to be accommodated. Prudence Blandy has been a lifelong faithful companion to me, but her husband tries the patience of a saint. In this respect, Clive House residents in Shrewsbury does value highly on a par with other centres of commerce. The official building does seem an old-fashioned place even in the year 1762. However, the smallness does not detract from the beauty, elegant furniture and a capricious dining room. The two large windows at the right within do seem to air the place to a height of gentility not even the Duchess of Richmond could excel. Her husband's new commissioned work by Stubbs about the hunt wouldn't hold a candle to the dining area mantelpiece. Robert Adam has his own individual style as well. I'm just nervous with excitement to think Prue and Ranley will not observe the small tokens of affection dear beloved husband Robert brought me last season from Madras. The lacquered tea caddy, cashmere shawl, and some Indian muslin were auspicious gifts. They are placed over the wine cooler near the sideboard to the left of our eating table. The left side is very bare. Only serving dishes flutter in and out of that side. Thoughtful presents from my husband are so fascinating to the couple. Prue has never been farther than Bristol in her life. That man thinks only of his stomach. I'm surprised he can consume any food at all with his 3 chins, fighting for attention every time he takes a mouthful. She must get him to see a physician about his gout. Robert is terribly late at his meeting. The hall carriage clock strikes 4:30. We must eat. I can't keep Prue and her husband in the drawing room much longer. I fear for that chair. After pacing up and down in the dining room with some trepidation, I rang the bell to summon my housekeeper. Within moments of our brief, polite conversation, she informed the butler and kitchen staff as to the plans ahead. James rang the dinner bell, to which Prue and Ramley waddled into the hall and were escorted into the room. They were seated judiciously, in order as protocol demands. James then attended to me, and entertainment commenced. I used my new brass table gong and mallet to summon the first course. My housekeeper remained in attendance at the door by the kitchen, as we hoped no problems would erupt during our meal. The toing and froing with open and closed doors, with a kitchen so close by the dining room, could be a potential disaster if not supervised properly. The huge dining table was resplendent in silver, with glasses bright from the sun-drenched windows behind. Our new cruet with the cayenne pepper, hot pepper and sugar dredger were on prominent display at the table. We wouldn't be needing them at all. Robert had so many months at sea, he was fed up with goat and other foods. I decided on a light homecoming menu with some fashionable foods now available. We started the meal with an unusual soup called mulligatawny. It was a clear broth with bits of pepper, chicken, cloves, nutmeg, curry and tomatoes in it. The flavour was strange, but the portion adequate to entice our appetites. A marigold salad in vinegar seemed to cut the sharpness of this first course. The diced potatoes in watercress and chives were rather crunchy. I liked the blended egg yolk in marigold petals. Now I had a chance to demonstrate my new green china from abroad. The dish itself is called green china churro. One must serve the main course with the plate for which it is intended. Nothing else must do. We shall have some white wine with it to contrast the tastes. It arrived late from the kitchen, a bit cold. The bed of rice engulfing the vegetables was soggy. I must teach the cook how to use rice. It costs as much as the tea we use, 50 shillings a pound, and all imported. The lettuces, peas and peppers seemed dead amongst the sliced mutton, but the cucumbers added a peaked flavour nevertheless. Ramley seemed to plead with me in desperation across the table for some stoic nourishment, but I will not give in. This is fashionable. We shall consume it with rapture. The bread jelly and orange flour cream suited the palates of Prue and I. The bread jelly was an inspired work of art with fine breadcrumbs, cinnamon and lemon rind. It was covered in sugar cream. It must have been set in ice to be so firm. The flour cream had a boiled taste, heavy in powdered sugar and flour water. Each individual moulded cream had a layer of light cream on top, dredged with sugar, but we could add further supplies from the cruet if necessary. The maids cleared away to bring the teapot and dishes. I wanted the Blandys to sample a special black tea from Darjeeling. We'd been used to the green gunpowder. The beakers, called dishes, didn't have a handle. The tea was served black. It is not fashionable to use cream, but a measure of brown sugar sweetened the liquid to our satisfaction. Ranelagh finally gave us a smile when we allowed him to partake of a cordial. It was Malaga Solara sack, rather like Marsala, combined with rosemary to be infused and fermented with saffron for many months. One fortified wine seemed to placate the man from his apparent lack of desire for our meal. Prue and I were about to retire to the drawing-room with the teapot when the doorbell rang. The butler opened the door to find a stranger there. He wished to speak to Master Robert Clive, but he was leaning heavily on an object which resembled my husband's walking stick.
The Master's Table was written by Ruth Hipwood and read by Angela Bray. Clive House in Shrewsbury in 1762 to hear about the meal being prepared for the master of the upper house. Today we go below stairs in the same year to hear the story of the kitchen maid of the period. Shropshire on a Plate, episode 6, Below Stairs, is written by Ruth Hipwood and read by Lynne Rixon of the Shawbury Players.
In Shepherd's indictment, there were 3 serious charges. On the first 2, lack of substantial evidence to convict was offered. The small, wiry, menacing villain, blessed with large, powerful hands, seemed to escape punishment by acquittal. However, indictment for a 3rd time cost young Jack Shepherd his liberty. Missing goods amounting to woolen cloth, 2 silver spoons and other possessions were presumed stolen at night time within the parish. 3 reliable witnesses attest to this design. William Nebo, Jonathan Wild, and one pitiable creature named William Field would affirm the case. First, Nebo, under oath at the chamber discourses his wretched plight. Compelled by remorse, he replied to his noble inquisitor thus: "The prisoner hath served some time being my servant." He continues slowly: "On the 12th of July last," muffled dry coughs of boredom intermingled with youthful giggles within the back kitchen walls as I read aloud. A 6-penny pamphlet from Newgate Jail appeared to occupy the staff until now. Reality beckoned my senses to the hot, steamy world below stairs by a sharp, distinct tap on the shoulder from cook Charlotte Evans. The woman was possessed. Eager for my all-encompassing endeavour, she flung my booklet down beside me and pointed in anger to the fireplace beyond. Mesmerised into fear by her actions, I quickly got up from the work-table bench. Below the mantelpiece opposite, and aside to the fireplace, hung steak tongs, beside them a tinderbox on its chain. Grasping for any sort of duty, the timber chain seemed to appear to be my safe harbour. Wrong again. She released the object from my hand to indicate an interest pertaining to a canister on the wooden oak mantelpiece. Fascinating goods were held fast there. Valuable jars held rennets and yeast, with bladder covers or quill feather gas-escaped stoppers. Further on stored a mortar and pestle for grinding precious bark, cinnamon or nutmegs from the New World. The largest sealed canister held chocolate, the smaller held coffee, but the one cook remained adamant about was the new black lacquered tea caddy. I reached in vain as not to burn my petticoats so near the fire, but couldn't reach without assistance. Quilt Reynolds, the boot boy, who was listening to the story intently with much perplexment, volunteered a small stool to help me up. The cheeky monkey tried to hobble Mistress Evans on the way, but got a facial reprimand with an ear slap for the trouble. The caddy of tea remained distant. No one else is available to retrieve it for her. Flour canisters or herb dredging tins were not so fondly used. A feeble, overly used candlestick had served its time for excursions into the cellar passages below us. The fire still takes me aback. Too many stories relate death by burns of poor kitchen maids like me catching a light. The workings within it remain red hot. Its narrow stone sidings do not help us in our labours. A pot crane swings back and forth above the meat spit with a dripping pan below. The bake oven remains idle, but I don't mind. Guess who has to stoke it? Whitewashed walls cheer up the station most proper. Hand-picked coals for the roaring fire look pretty in the reed-woven basket on the left. Pity I have to scrape the floor many times hence with sand and soda to clean it. The big wooden table and benches are my only comfort. A hallway carriage clock strikes 5 of the clock. Mistress Evans, resplendent in a workaday costume of lace collar and hat, black dress with a formidable white boiled full apron. Her false hair curls invaded a wrinkled countenance. She clicked her boots in staccato across the kitchen to the entrance. Porteous James, the enormous paunchy butler, came to meet her in distress. They whispered to my dismay. Left out of everything, as usual. Moments of silence produced swift orders. He demanded the groom, the boot boy, and Tabitha, my junior, to accompany him post-haste. The Clive House master requires a carriage, but why? I shall not know. Charlotte, my superior, haunts me daily in her guise. Her ghostly swishings of the costume, intertwined with the bonnet and false curls, drives me borrow the master's old books. Porteous, or Pompous as I call him, thrust his command to be industrious. He shall return late with the others. A stranger, finding the master's old walking cane, had returned it. The Lady Clive rewarded him with a journey to town. They will escort the journey. They shall sup later. Doesn't know what he's doing, I say. Says one, brags about another. His overflowing jowls and livery make him a twin to the male visitor the lady had in the residence today. Only a brief look at the man. I'm not allowed to serve at table. The butler told me to stop daydreaming and to attend to the evening meal for us. We shall have artichoke hot pot with coarse bread and butter, muffin pudding in bilberry custard. The ladies shall have salop cordial, but the men will imbibe in nettle beer. That is what he wants. Dear Charlotte always obeys. The man quickly collected the apprentices to disappear in haste at the vestibule. In 1762, it should be known that kitchen maids are sorely neglected. Downcast, I concocted a design to effect an injury. In sudden imagination, I grasped my belly and pretend pain, but the cook wouldn't have it. She shuffled over to the fire to place a metal fire pot on the crane after removing the other. I was sent with a candlestick lit to obtain jars full of pickled artichoke, fresh leeks, bacon and white stock. Upon returning from the steps, she placed the ingredients on the work table. She diced the sugar-cured bacon into bits, drained the artichokes and chopped the leeks into eatable lengths. She fried the bacon bits in the dripping pan, fished them out to set aside. The artichokes, leeks and broth went into the pot. It bubbled in fury as the bacon was added. Simmering low now, the liquid could be made into a sauce. Thickening thus, it was returned to the pot. Leftover muffins were placed in a copper-greased mould by her selection. Teaspoons of honey interleaved them. Grated lemon and lime rind with a sneaky pinch of nutmeg coated them. A batter of egg white, beaten flour and milk covered the mixture. Boiled sweet custard dotted with bilberries would serve as a topping sauce later. It too hummed beside the spit apparatus. Guess who had to carry up from the cellar 2 pewter flagons of nettle beer to heat up by the fire. We ladies would partake of the Dogstone soft drink made of orchis matula in a fine powder, costing £1 an ounce. You mix it into water, stirring fast to a firm jelly. It's quite pleasant with 3 eggs beaten, thick cream, and a spoonstick of bark cinnamon. Twixt the borders it is served oddly. Ireland puts it in a teacup dish, so rich they are, and add an egg yolk to it. Scotland has it in a glass with alcohol. The Welsh put sugar with it. We are so badly off. Punctually absorbed into the work, Mistress Evans is now happily attending the fire. Tiptoeing, I shall return to the work table bench and read the pamphlet so neglected. What page number was it? Carefully I rifled the book in order to pick it up. Newgate Jail, pamphlet number 2.
Below Stairs was written by Ruth Hipwood and read by Lynne Rixon. And if you'd like a fact sheet and typical menu for that period, and for each of the episodes in this series, then simply send a stamped addressed envelope to Shropshire on a plate, P.O. Box 397 in Shrewsbury, and we'll have more tomorrow at the same time. Meals served up in the important places in the county throughout the year. Today we visit a house in Cressage in the year 1862 to witness the departure of the son of the household off to Shrewsbury School. The story, seen through the eyes of the old housemaid, is written by Ruth Hipwood of Shrewsbury and read by Sue Williams of the Shawbury Players. I closed the nursery door and stood blanketed within the room. Time crawls slowly like a snail when a departure is evident. This dusty, weather-beaten old tuckbox will soon be going to travel and be used by young Master Richard. It was a dangerously hard climb back down on the willow ladder from a cottage loft, but the duty had to be carried out by a nursemaid of senior experience. Mrs. Wenglish, Dicky's mother, had sent his 6 older brothers on a similar journey many years earlier. Now the baby of the family must go, and I have to help. This occasion will be rather sad. Titch, as I call him, was mine to supervise since he toddled into my arms a long time ago. This funny, uneven chamber is a second home to me. The crooked floor can't be helped. It's been in the family for 200 years in Cressage. Diamond-leaded shaped windows on both sides didn't help me all that much. Tiny circular rugs dotted the creaking floor. Numerous old toys he no longer bothers to play with, and his pet dog snooze quietly up one corner. The bed is unmade as usual. He won't do as he is told. The boy has to learn some responsibility. With difficulty I heave up the old trunk into my arms as the dog follows me moaningly behind. The object hits the upper floor with a thud. I turn the doorknob and call the pet to heel. Oh, stay there, see if I care. And I left the entrance open. Once more the box enters my embrace for that final walk into the kitchen. Dicky and his mother are waiting for me. Time is short. The family booked the carriage for 6:15 in order to meet the post-chaise at the junction en route to the town. I'll miss you, little one. The iron-installed staircase loomed at the end of the passage. Each step to reach the main hall and kitchen below seemed an eternity. There was no room to manoeuvre. Progress was slow. 3/4 of an hour left to pack. Step by step of aching metal did not assist the situation. Finally, the bottom rung was reached to enter the main hall. The elegantly furnished living quarter was deserted. Juggling the box precariously across the finely polished floor, I proceeded to the kitchen entrance door. Looking twice, I entered to find Mrs. Wenglish engrossed in the larder at the far wall by the dish cupboard. She linked the boy by the waist and pointed furiously to jars and containers inside the open compartment. Earthenware jugs and china pot basins intertwined the maze of sauce bottles, fruit dishes and commercial condiment holders. Enamel tins were spread heavy on top of one another. The smells of spice and pickle. What an Aladdin's cave of delights presented and confused the boy. What shall he take away with him? Mrs. Wenglish bade me to put the box by her and open the buckled lock. Stiff with neglect, the 2 ends finally opened to pressure. Pulling and dusting the attached box lid was a problem. It had stuck with age. However, elbow grease dislodged it enough to be pulled back. The top tray needed slipped from its moorings easily. 6 small compartments moved to be cleaned out with a damp rag. The longer compartment attached to it had 2 little rotating attachments to move it back and forth. It worked perfectly. A voluminous bottom base revealed itself from underneath the top tray. Just a quick flick with a nearby dust rag cleaned it out. Now they were ready to pack away treasures needed for the next 3 months. It's so sad. Only half an hour left till the carriage comes for Richard. Mrs. Wenglish opened 2 glass jars at the bottom of the larder to reveal some sweets. One contained sour cream drops covered in icing, and the other had elongated green sticks pointing out in various directions within it. I found some squares of white paper on the nearby table. Dickie picked out 2 hands of drops from one. We made a game of wrapping the treat. They found a home within the top tray of the box. 6 peppermint sticks were also wrapped en masse to accompany them in the large-ended section. Tiny areas on the other end demanded 6 little places be filled with something. We played hide and seek among the petite jars containing spices in the larder. His mother chose a metal grater to vitalise a supply of whole nutmegs. Inside each gives a surprise of mace flavouring toast or drinks. Bark cinnamon sticks, whole black peppercorn, candied lemon and orange peel, cloves and coriander would help develop the taste of ale if provided. He could always barge it away for some other comfort later. Having filled the uppermost cavity of the box, we proceeded to the deep base below. Cook had made some sickly gingerbread for him just to take away in an enamel tin. The items started off with ballast. 2 earthenware jars held a treasure each. One had newly potted damson jam for breakfast, and the other held quince marmalade for supper. It held a balance at the bottom of the box. Next, the covered sponge cake went on top of the gingerbread. This luscious, creamy confection was light and easy to digest. The parchment-covered treat was wrapped firmly with string. The smell of freshness into cream was difficult to resist for all of us. 2 small boxes contained a supply of warm tea cakes and crumpets, made this morning by Cook. Pushing these carefully aside made room for a savoury-smelling herb bread made with white flour. An aroma of sage oozed from the bag encasing it. Cased in a small tin with cracked ice held a pretty flower china pot, full of shrimp paste covered in butter as a seal. It was balanced on top beside the tea cakes and crumpets. Carefully the box developed into a heavy burden to be transported to the conveyance in due course. The lady wrangler slipped some metal coins into the lower level of the box without the boy noticing. I distracted the lad when she put 5 guineas in for him to spend. It took time to close the box. Sticky gingerbread mingling with soft gooey sponge cake, pliant buns and bread to detract from the strong spices and digestives to be placed on top of it. The crowning glory rested tenuously on the loaded base of the box. We closed it caringly with 7 minutes on the clock to spare. The boy had his travelling finery on. He donned his hat and short jacket quickly. We locked the trunk and handed the keys to Dickie, and sadly we escorted him out of the cottage at the Cressage village crossroads. A trample of hoofs within earshot brought a tearful farewell to us all. The carriage trotted powerfully towards the rendezvous, and the tiny soul seemed lost in his fitted half-cut jacket, short-fitted trousers and flat cap. His tiny face is lost among the clothes. I shall miss those blue eyes staring at me. His mother gave him a quick hug to say goodbye. The coach shall arrive near the approaches of Shrewsbury School sometime this evening, and little Dickie will commence the large educational hall in the year 1862.
That was The Hour Begins, Part 7 of Shropshire on a Plate, written by Ruth Hipwood and read by Sue Williams. Meals and menus through the ages in Shropshire. In today's instalment, we're in the year 1889 as 2 girlfriends visit the shop of H. Mudd and Sons in Wyle, Shrewsbury to purchase fish for supper. Appropriately entitled Tailpiece, the account is written by Ruth Hipwood and read by Diane Wood of the Shawbury Players.
Agnes Braithwaite pedalled her bicycle aimlessly along the public thoroughfare in Longden, Colham. Then she had a purpose in mind and pressed on. She didn't seem to notice me as I waved to her in passing. Suddenly my face registered. The determined woman realised who I was and backtracked to commence a conversation. An affectionate tolerance had developed since we were girls, but maturity had taken its toll on our social life. Moments of relaxation were few and far between. Today, we shall be old school friends. The tiny shops near the Greyfriars Bridge didn't seem to have what we both had wanted. Swaying trees scraped along the edges of the river. Its mood was one of peaceful progress underneath. Agnes and I decided to traverse the bridge into Shrewsbury for some shopping. Casually, we stepped into the bouncy walkway, moving along with the bicycle inch by inch. A breeze intercepted us along the passage. Our journey was short, So we came off the bridge to St. Julian Friar's central walkway. Several grey-stoned buildings lined the path, and 2 stone cottages hung tenuously at the back as we passed. There were very few people on this side of the river. The Georgian windows of some buildings peeked out at us as we approached the busy junction of Beecher's Land, and heavy carriages crossed over the English bridge. Huge dray horses, struggling with their loads, paraded past us as we stood to cross over the road. Remains of previous travelling vehicles and horses left their calling cards near our boots. Ladies with perambulators, gentlemen with top hats and canes strolled beside us. There didn't seem to be a space for us to cross to Wyle as yet. It was best just to watch the traffic pass for our turn to go. Street dogs of various sizes hugged the curb. A spotted, scruffy animal of no fixed breed jumped up on my skirt with muddy paws. Agnes chased it away. My new starched blouse and skirt had been laboriously pressed and turned out in style for moving in public. My hanging blouse watch fob had indicated it was 11 o'clock. Quickly brushing the dirt from my skirt, I hoped the world wouldn't notice the mess too much. My white hand gloves were filthy now. Agnes just held on to her bicycle and left me to my own devices. Suddenly there was a space in the hurly-burly of the street. We sauntered carefully across, trying to avoid further mud in town. Up the hill, we passed several open-windowed establishments, and now the Line Hotel had come into our sight. In conversation crossing the road, Agnes had stated she needed some provisions from fish and poultry merchant for a meal in the evening. We had not reached the food merchant yet, but it was some few yards ahead of the Line Hotel. The store we were after was of Tudor design, with large windows above the ground floor. In the middle of the larger windows up top was a set of diamond-leaded windows, with shields of stained glass decorating it. The higher level hung over to create a dominating atmosphere. Harry Mudd's main sign said he was a London and Grimsby deep-sea depot. Below that was a bigger, busier sign stating his trade with all manner of goods hanging outside for display. The sign said, Harry Mudd, W. Mudd and Sons, Grimsby, wholesale fish merchants. Now this was where Agnes proved to be more than just a pretty face to her husband. Her cool green eyes always surveyed any situation first before going into it. We both looked at the top row of hanging game near the second sign with interest. The second and descending rows of dead birds were of no use to my companion. I stared momentarily into the front windows of the establishment from our short distance, but couldn't really tell the contents until we walked closer to it. Agnes stopped for a moment before we got to the shop. We squeezed into a corner outside the shop to prepare for the transaction ahead. Agnes straightened her skirt and adjusted the belt on her jacket to improve the slimness of her build. After quickly scraping her boots on an outside boot device, she handed her transportation vehicle to me. Her drawstring dolly bag held a small looking glass. She tossed her elaborately arranged hairstyle a bit further up off her neck. It always had tints of chestnut and ginger in it. The broad-rimmed hat was duly made level, and the little veil from its outer edge to slightly cover her freckled countenance. I was asked to hold her bicycle while she completed her transaction at Harry Mudd's. What are friends for, if not to help one another? She poured in her stance, and we entertained ideas as to purchasing food from this man. Out of the entrance walked a heavily set man, wearing a white boater, who was clean-shaven save for a moustache. He wore a dark brown jacket and trousers. His freshly creased apron donned the majority of the frame. He scuffed some sawdust on the stone floor. Agnes took the lead in this situation. She walked in and they greeted one another. She indicated the servants had the day off, so she was cooking for the household. The menu she had in mind was salt cod with sweet parsnips, an old family recipe. For dessert, she would make a generous cabinet pudding, covered in hot custard sauce, and have lashings of hot warming tea in the pot as usual. The man smiled gleefully. No other customer was there inside the shop, so they were free to chat. He asked her to describe the dishes, mainly the first course, and he could advise on a purchase later. Well, she exclaimed, the salt cod was a religious recipe used during Lent in the Middle Ages. The family had used it for years. Wash the dried fish, soak in water for several hours, heat to boiling point, add warm water and heat again. Cover the fish the last time with milk and water and cover with long cut parsnips. Simmer gently till soft. Lift out the fish and drain. Mash the parsnips and add butter with seasoning. Make a yellow egg sauce by beating in the yolks to stock after it has boiled. Drink it with buttermilk as it destroys the taste of tea or coffee with it. Her household serves a choice for the individual in this area. The pudding is made in a buttered mould filled with Genoese cake cut into squares. Dates, raisins and sultanas are poured in. A light egg mixture, boiled, covers it. It simmers slowly for an hour and then is turned out of the mould to form a cake. The hot custard sauce covers the creation. The man started to indicate gastronomic ecstasy at the thought presented to him. On the marble slab at the back, he brought out 2 magnificent pieces of salt cod. Agnes rifled in her purse for change, but only located a sovereign. He winked at her and went to the cash register to make change. He only asked for a couple of shillings. It seemed a waste to pay vastly over, with the high inflation of 1889. Agnes took it in her stride. The man wrapped up the fish in heavy brown paper and tied it with string. He gave her a free spice sauce as a gift thrown in. My companion stated she will expect her carriage to pick up the regular order next week. A little wave was given as she nodded to him goodbye. I trundled behind with the bicycle. When we left, outside, well away from the shop, she said that this little game goes on week after week. It's our secret.
Tailpiece was written by Ruth Hipwood and read by Diane Wood. Shropshire on a Plate. Over the past fortnight around this time, we've been looking back through time at the sorts of kitchen conditions and meals that prevailed through Shropshire's history, from the kind of banquet that would have been served at the old Oswestry hill fort, right up to the ration book period of World War II, which is where we are today as we hear a typical Ministry of Food broadcast to be heard in Shropshire in 1942.
Food is the munition of war. Don't waste it. Tune into this station for broadcasts from the Ministry of Food to help you win the kitchen front. Every morning at 8:15, we'll provide guidelines to many useful ways of coping with rations. Leftovers are the enemy to our battle. Fight your own campaign with creating your own recipes for table scraps. Many exciting fillings can be made for light suppers or packed lunches. Get through your difficulties and work with the same spirit you expect from our brave boys in the forces. Planning the full use of your rations and allowances requires skill and forbearance. Vegetables and whole grain foods are part of your fighting diet. As from July 1942, the Ministry of Food will be administering rations from Swan Hill Court. I repeat, Swan Hill Court. Our children are our future. Keep them nourished as we fight the war. Carrots, cabbage and watercress will sustain and energize. Use your potatoes wisely. They're useful in making pastry as well as filler. 1 level tablespoon of dried egg powder to the use of 2 tablespoons of water will make the equivalent of 1 egg. Please behave in the way others would wish to be treated. The food you squander may save someone else's life another day. The ration for 1 adult per week consists of the following: bacon and ham, 4 ounces. Meat to the value of 1 shilling, 2 pennies. Sausages are not rationed, but they can be difficult to obtain. Offal is unrationed. Butter will be dispensed at 2 ounces. Cheese also 2 ounces, but it may go up to 4 ounces. Milk will be 3 pints a week. Dried skimmed milk is an excellent substitute. Mix carefully and your supplies for this powder will be 1 packet a week. Eggs will be provided in a dry powdered consistency. 1 packet a week will be available. 1 fresh egg a week is allowed if available. 12 ounces of sweets each ends the ration list for 4 weeks. Hang on to your old ration books until the end of August. They may still be needed to get your first tin of dried supplies or preserves. The tea coupons can be used for the purchase of oranges. They will not be cut out. Page 25 of every book contains the names and addresses of your local retailers. It is illegal to use the book if these are not filled in. Demonstrators from the Ministry of Food will be touring your area to provide useful ways in which to develop your local resources for the war effort. Do your bit and attend. When you dig for victory, make use of vegetables that will store. Potatoes and carrots will change their uniforms many times to win over your stomach. Herbs wake up the mind to many uses, not just for boiling the plain carrots or spuds. Disguise or enhance your main allies to your best advantage. Control your vast army of goods in a way just your own. Put a little style into each dish. The challenge of rationed goods can be fun. Create your own ration recipe books. Use the disciplines to your benefit. We can only give you guidelines, but it is the family at home who finally decides the home guards for health. And now, our simple menu for today consists of corned beef hash, summer pudding with mock cream, and tea. This nutritious diet is easy to prepare, cheap, and doesn't swallow up your precious supplies. Our first course uses onions, the medium size, 8 ounces of cooked potatoes, diced corned beef, and some sliced tomatoes. The total cooking time is 15 minutes. Your war work, ladies, can progress without spending a lot of time in the kitchen. Now the method. Get a frying pan with the lid and some drippings. Locate your heat source and make sure it can be adjustable. Right, now proceed. Cut up your onions, dice the corned beef and slice the tomatoes. Melt the dripping in the pan. Add onions to fry gently until translucent. Add the other ingredients with a little seasoning. Cover the pan with a lid or a plate if you haven't got one, and cook for 10 to 15 minutes very slowly. Serve with a Shropshire salad. Secondly, the pudding. Preparation time, half an hour, that's 30 minutes. The dessert will serve 4 people. Get your homegrown rhubarb, some prunes, half a pint of water, 8 ounces of bread, and a little sugar. Now stew the rhubarb and prunes in the water. Grease a cake tin or pudding basin to hold the contents. Line it with bread and strain the juice from your fruit. Fill in alternative layers of fruit, sugar, and bread. Pack tightly, finishing with the bread. Pour over the juice and place the dish on top and leave overnight. Turn out and serve with mock cream or custard. Mock cream can be made in only 5 minutes. Use some corn flour, milk, margarine and sugar. Blend the corn flour with the milk in a saucepan. Stir on a low heat and allow to cool. Cream your margarine and sugar till fluffy and soft. Gradually beat a teaspoon of milk into it. Continue until the ingredients are mixed well. This makes a delicious thick treat at next to nothing of cost, and it serves 2 to 4 people. Keep the brew up for the hard workers who return home. Warming food satisfies all. The large, heavy man doesn't need more than the lady at her workstation. Plan your points and obey the rules. You can win, well, maybe the football, but we all can direct our campaign of action on the kitchen front. Our touring demonstrators will be in your neighbourhood soon. Keep an observant eye out for anybody not usually seen in the district. The Ministry of Food also wants your cooking secrets. Send them to us and we shall use them to spread the workload of kitchen intelligence. Dig for victory. Support Shropshire produce. This is the Ministry of Food signing off.
The Kitchen Front, the last in the series Shropshire on a Plate, was read by Sheena McLellan, who incidentally will be back on The Breakfast Show a week on Monday. The series writer was Ruth Hipwood, and if you'd like a set of fact sheets and menus from Shropshire's past, simply send a stamped addressed envelope to Shropshire on a Plate, P.O. Box 397, Shrewsbury. Phil Collins takes us out of the programme today.